All right, welcome to the deep dive. We're all about taking those big, dense books and getting you right to the good stuff, those key insights that make you seriously well-informed. And today, well, we're going deep on a book that you sent our way. It's called Management in Times of War, and it's written by Kostyantin Koshelenko.
Yeah, this is not your typical business book. I mean, think about it. It's coming straight from the experience of managing in a war zone in Ukraine, and that's about as intense as it gets.
Definitely not your average Monday morning meeting.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found so fascinating is how Koshelenko brings in all these different voices.
Oh, absolutely.
You've got entrepreneurs, you've got CEOs, government officials, and even experts from around the world, all these different perspectives on what it takes to lead when things are completely falling apart.
And I think that's what makes it so valuable. You know, it's not just one person's take. It's a whole chorus of people who have lived through this, this incredible pressure cooker of wartime management.
And it really got me thinking, even though the backdrop here is war in Ukraine, these lessons, they feel so relevant to so many other situations.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, think about it. Natural disasters, recessions, even pandemics. Anytime you're leading when the ground beneath you is shifting.
Absolutely. When the old playbook gets thrown out the window.
Exactly. So our mission today, and the reason why I think this deep dive is going to be so valuable for our listeners, is to really extract those core, actionable management principles, the ones that emerged from this high-pressure environment, and that you, our listener, can apply in any situation that demands that you adapt and be resilient.
I like it. So ready to dive in.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So let's start with kind of the initial shock. How does wartime chaos really impact those day-to-day teams and processes? The book really highlights how the initial shock of the war, it acted almost like a catalyst, right? It forced people to get really inventive just to keep things going.
Yeah, and one of the things that jumps out right away is this emphasis on team agility. It's not just about rigid processes. It's not about having the fanciest tech. It's about having a team that can bend, that can flex, that can come up with solutions on the fly.
It makes you wonder how much we get bogged down in process in those normal times.
Right, exactly. I mean, maybe empowering the team to figure it out is actually the most efficient way, especially when things are unpredictable.
So true. And it's not just theory, right? The book has these really personal anecdotes that make it so real. Koshelenko talks about his own daily routine, how it changed completely.
Yeah.
Suddenly he's checking the streets for safety before going to work, hugging his family in a makeshift shelter. I mean, it just puts you right there in that moment.
It humanizes it, right? Yeah. And you start to see how those personal anxieties, those personal realities bleed into the professional world.
For sure. And that bleeds into this bigger shift, right? From individual effort to this sense of needing to pull together to be resilient as a collective.
100%. It's like, even if not everyone was thrilled about pulling all-nighters, there was this understanding, this unspoken understanding that they were all in it together.
I think that's such a powerful insight. And I thought the point about decentralizing responsibility was so crucial to be able to respond quickly.
Oh, for sure. In a war, things change so fast, right? You can't wait for decisions to trickle down from the top.
Exactly. You got to empower those teams on the ground to make the calls. Can you think of any specific examples from the book where this really made a difference?
Well, yeah. I mean, think about resource allocation, right? In a war, you've got to figure out where to send the troops, where to send the supplies.
Makes sense.
And for businesses, it's kind of similar. The book actually draws a parallel to portfolio theory.
Interesting. Okay, explain that one.
So portfolio theory is all about spreading your resources around, like an investment portfolio. You don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Right. Diversification.
Exactly. And in this case, it's about looking at all your resources, people, money, time, even tech, and figuring out how to distribute them to get the most impact.
It's like in war, you have to decide which territories to defend.
Exactly. And in business, you've got to identify those critical assets, those key customers, those things that absolutely have to keep running.
And then make sure they're protected.
Exactly. Which, brings us to another key point, and that's bottlenecks.
Oh, yeah.
You got to identify them, and you've got to figure out how to get around them.
Like finding a new supplier when your usual one is, cut off by the conflict.
Right. Or changing your entire production process overnight. It's about being flexible, being able to adapt really, really quickly.
Which, brings us to that whole agile approach.
Yeah, exactly.
And the book gives all sorts of examples, like companies having to change suppliers rapidly, refocus their advertising, or even, like you said, completely revamp their production. It's like a business equivalent of a military maneuver.
Yeah. It's fascinating, right? I think it also raises the question of how companies that were already using agile methods before the warfare compared to those that weren't.
Yeah, that would be an interesting study. So now we've got this picture of this incredibly dynamic environment, right? But what about the people, the teams working under this constant stress? I mean, how do you even begin to manage that?
Yeah, and the book is really honest about how difficult that is.
Yeah.
I mean, even Kosciuszko himself admits that his own communication, at first it got really negative. Short-tempered, kind of that classic stress response.
Which, is understandable under the circumstances.
Absolutely. But what's important is that he recognized that, right? He realized he had to change his approach.
And that change led to a real focus on open communication and mutual support within the team.
Right. Like, if the leader is freaking out, the whole team is going to freak out.
It shows how much leadership in a crisis is about managing the human element.
100%. And it's also about creating an environment where people can actually use their strengths,
Right.
Like, you're not going to get perfection in a war zone, but if you set the direction and support people in moving towards it, you can still get incredible results.
Progress over perfection. I like that.
Yeah. And I think it ties back to that idea of the team as an organism rather than a rigid hierarchy.
I remember that analogy. Yeah.
Right. It's like if you have these smaller self-sufficient working groups focused on a shared goal, they can adapt and recover much faster.
Like a body healing itself.
Exactly. And that brings us to another critical point, sustainability. You can't run at 100 miles an hour forever.
True. Burnout is real.
The book talks about this idea of an unstable team of heroes. Everyone's pushing themselves to the limit and eventually they just crash.
It's unsustainable. So how do you combat that?
Well, communication becomes even more important, right? You got to keep everyone informed, keep them connected.
Even if it feels like you're talking to a brick wall sometimes.
Even then, Kosciuszko actually noticed that only a small core group was really engaged with his regular updates.
Interesting.
But he kept doing it. And, it actually makes sense if you think about the Pareto principle.
Okay, break that down for me.
So the Pareto principle says that roughly 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts.
So even if only a small group is really engaged, they can still have a huge impact.
Exactly. And the book also gives some really practical communication tips.
Okay, give me the highlights.
Keep it clear. Keep it concise. Use short video updates if you can so people can actually see you and hear your tone. Be consistent with your communication schedule so people know what to expect. And most importantly, be empathetic.
Acknowledge that everyone is under an immense amount of stress.
Exactly. And don't forget about delegation.
Right.
It's not just about taking things off your plate. It's about empowering your team.
And giving them opportunities to grow.
Yeah. And even in a crisis, you've got to provide clear expectations, consistent feedback, and support.
It's investing in the future, even when the present is so uncertain.
Absolutely. Now, the book does acknowledge that sometimes, in really extreme situations, a more authoritarian style of leadership might be necessary.
Like when you need to make a split-second decision.
Right. But the key is to go back to a more democratic approach as soon as possible.
To build that long-term trust and engagement.
Exactly. And, another thing that really stood out to me was the emphasis on empathy in communication.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about that.
It's not just about saying, how are you? It's about genuinely caring, about separating that personal check-in from work stuff.
It's that human connection, even in a crisis.
Right. And even small things, like organizing English conversation clubs for the team can make a huge difference.
It's a little bit of normalcy in the middle of all the chaos.
Yeah. And for leaders, those regular meetings become crucial.
To define purpose, shape the strategy, and keep the lines of communication open.
Exactly. And make sure things are actually getting done.
Actionable steps.
Right. Now, the book uses this interesting analogy of shooting for the moon.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So, on one hand, that kind of bold ambition can be incredibly inspiring. It can lead to amazing innovations.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also the risk of burnout. If you set goals that are completely unrealistic, it can actually damage the team's morale.
It's a balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ambition, but also achievable goals.
Exactly. And that's where coaching and mentorship come in.
To help people develop their skills and adapt to these crazy circumstances.
Right. And it's not all serious business either. The book talks about things like having table tennis tournaments in the middle of a war zone.
It's like you need those moments of fun, those human connections to get through it.
For sure. Now, the book also brings in a lot of insights from other experts, and I think that really adds another layer to this whole conversation about leadership and teams.
Oh, absolutely. It's like getting a master class from all these different perspectives.
Right. So, for example, you've got Greg Sattel, who talks about how expectations can really influence performance.
Makes sense. Like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. And he also points out how we often only see the successes, but there are all these failures and setbacks that we learn from along the way.
Right. Failure is part of the process.
Totally. And then you have Catherine Valinga, who talks about the importance of an organization's superpower.
What does she mean by that?
She's talking about that core purpose, that brand, that motivation that comes from within.
The heart of the company.
Exactly. And she says you can't let that go, even in a crisis.
It's about staying true to who you are, even when everything around you is changing.
100%. And then we have Oksana Zonovich, the Minister of Social Policy in Ukraine, who talks about making decisions quickly, but also inclusively.
So speed and diversity of thought are not mutually exclusive.
No, not at all. And she also emphasizes the importance of taking breaks, even in a war zone.
Self-care is not a luxury, right? It's essential.
Exactly. Then there's Hannah Leineck, who talks about this 3-step process for learning and applying new knowledge.
Okay, break that down for me.
So it's reflective pause, structured implementation, and then 3-tier validation.
I can see how that would be helpful in a fast-paced environment.
Totally. And then you have Ihor Smolyansky, the CEO of Ukposhta, the Ukrainian postal service.
Wow, talk about essential services.
Right, and he talks about the importance of being present, both physically and in communication.
Leading from the front.
Exactly. And he also stresses the importance of having contingency plans in place before a crisis hits.
Like being prepared.
Exactly. And then there's Ivan Trakchikov from Run Ukraine, who talks about making decisions collectively with partners.
Teamwork.
Yes. And then Tatiana Yashkina really emphasizes the importance of discipline and setting an example.
Leading by example.
Yeah. Now, shifting gears a bit, the book also introduces this concept of hellish agile.
Hellish agile. Okay, that sounds intense.
It is. It's basically project management under the most extreme conditions you can imagine.
Wartime project management.
Exactly. And it's about taking those core agile principles and pushing them to their absolute limits.
Like resilience as a way of life.
Exactly. And the book paints this picture of offices turning into these incredible beehives of activity.
Sounds chaotic.
It was, but it was also incredibly productive. People had to adapt, even those who were used to a slower pace.
And then there's this concept of the war room.
Oh, yeah. This is where it all comes together. It's a space for collaboration, for open communication, for using visual tools to track progress and make decisions.
Like a command center for problem solving.
Exactly. And the book talks about how these innovative projects, they became these huge motivational forces.
I can see that, like working on something that has a real impact.
Right. And the dia sharing example is a great illustration of that.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Simplifying processes, making things easier for people.
Exactly. And it's fascinating how those core agile principles, individuals and interactions, working product, customer collaboration, responding to change, they all become so critical in a war zone.
It's like Agile was made for this kind of environment.
Right. And the book even talks about the shift from VUCA to BENI.
Okay, refresh my memory on those acronyms.
So VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous.
Right.
But now they're saying it's more like bayonet brittle, anxious, nonlinear, and incomprehensible.
So things are even more unpredictable and chaotic now.
Exactly. And Agile's flexibility is perfect for that.
So if someone's thinking about implementing Agile, what advice does the book offer?
Well, it says to focus on building a growth culture, be willing to reevaluate your principles, and always make sure Agile aligns with your overall goals.
It's about adapting the framework to your specific needs.
Exactly. And the case study of developing the adoption service on the Dia portal is a great example of that.
Yeah, I remember that. Doing all of that under immense pressure.
It's a real-world example of how these principles can work.
Yeah. Let's talk about risk management. I mean, how do you even begin to manage risk in a war zone?
Yeah, it's a whole different ballgame. You've got air raids, missile strikes. It's constant uncertainty.
It's like, how do you plan for that?
And the book talks about this realization that the leader of a project actually becomes a risk themselves.
Wow, I never thought of it that way.
Right. If something happens to the leader, the whole project could be in jeopardy.
It's a huge responsibility.
It is. And that leads to this emphasis on building strong relationships based on trust and transparency.
Honesty is the best policy, especially in a crisis.
Absolutely. And again, Agile's flexibility comes in handy here. That continuous feedback loop, the retrospective process, it's all about learning from your mistakes and adapting.
But ultimately, the book acknowledges that you can't eliminate all risk.
No, especially in a war zone. You just have to learn to live with it, to adapt to it.
It's like that example in the book of the young child who knows the March Each trauma protocol.
Yeah, that one really got to me. It shows how deeply the conflict has affected people's lives.
It's a reminder that even in the midst of all this, we're still talking about human beings.
Absolutely. And technology played a huge role in building resilience.
Oh yeah, the book talks about all sorts of tech innovations.
Like the Air Raid Alert app, the e-enemy chatbot, Starlink for internet access.
And the DAE app for displaced persons. Technology really became a lifeline.
And even AI tools like ChatGPT were used to help write the book itself.
Wow, that's incredible. It's amazing how quickly technology can be adapted and used in new ways.
It is. And the development of the electronic case management system for social services is another great example.
Building better systems, even in the middle of a war.
Right. And then there's the E8 humanitarian platform, the unified information system of the social sphere, the unified social register, dia.engine for managing registries.
It's like a whole digital infrastructure being built from scratch.
It is. And it's all about making things more efficient, more transparent, more accessible.
And even in the context of warfare, the book talks about the use of technology.
Like supplying Mavic drones.
It's incredible how quickly these things can be deployed. Now, speaking of broader perspectives, the book also delves into the impact of technology and international cooperation.
Yeah, and it brings in a lot of expert opinions on that.
Like a global think tank.
Exactly. So you've got Jason Foodman, who talks about using CRMs and Slack for efficiency.
Those are the tools that keep teams connected and organized.
Exactly. And then Martin Vesper points to AI and automation as drivers of complexity and partnership.
And Andreas Kienzler talks about remote collaboration tools and open APIs as drivers of innovation.
Right. And Charles Muck talks about the transformative power of the internet and how AI could be a game changer for Ukraine's recovery.
And Mia Kolmotten highlights the role of online tools in fostering global collaboration.
Yeah. And Ihor Smeliansky talks about Ukropashta's push towards digitalization and automation.
Aiming to be paperless by 2024. That's ambitious.
It is. And then you have Artem Kovdel talking about AI-powered onboarding systems.
Yeah, Marina Avdieva highlights the use of cloud tech, IoT, computer vision, and AI in the insurance sector.
And Yevhen Zygrev talks about the system for direct payments from humanitarian organizations and the role of private donors.
It's like a whole ecosystem of support, both from within and outside Ukraine.
Exactly. And the book really emphasizes the importance of building strong networks.
But quality over quantity, right?
Exactly. It's about finding partners who share your values, who are in it for the long haul.
And the book talks about the benefits of international cooperation.
Access to global markets, technology, capital, and in return, providing insights into the local business environment.
It's a mutually beneficial relationship.
Absolutely. And it's not just about accepting any partner who comes along.
It's about being strategic, about understanding their goals, their resources, their way of operating.
And you have to be able to discern genuine interest from those who might not have your best interests at heart.
And escalate issues when necessary.
Exactly. The book even gives an example of how NAFO, the North Atlantic Fellow Organization, used humor and memes to fight Russian disinformation online.
It's an unconventional approach, but it seems to be working.
It does. And, ultimately, international cooperation in wartime, it's all about trust, understanding, and solidarity.
It's about building bridges, not walls.
Exactly. And the book also highlights the crucial role of volunteers.
They're the unsung heroes in so many ways.
They are. And the development of that electronic platform to make it easier for people to volunteer and to show gratitude for their contributions, that's a great example of how technology can be used to facilitate those connections.
So finally, let's talk about personal resilience, values, and the future outlook. The book discusses how Ukrainian businesses adapted their marketing and communication strategies during the war.
Yeah, they had to get creative.
Like leveraging social media platforms like Twitter and LinkedIn for impactful messaging.
Right. And using personal stories like that image of the children in the parking lot to really connect with people on an emotional level.
It's the power of storytelling.
And the book also talks about targeting international companies to influence their operations in Russia.
Like the banking sector example.
Exactly. And the power of collective action online, like the virtual squadron of pro-Ukrainian partisans. It's amazing how much impact people can have in the digital space.
It really is. And the book revisits some of those expert insights on decision-making in challenging circumstances.
Yeah, like Oksana Zolnovich talking about seeking diverse opinions for quicker decisions.
And Ivan Trechikov talking about his team's decision to support the fight through their projects.
Right. And Dmitry Strysov highlights adaptability and problem solving. Catherine Valinga emphasizes transparency and honesty in communication.
And Martin Vesper shares lessons from his military service and from the COVID outbreak.
Derek Elder talks about the importance of preparation. Jason Foodman emphasizes planning and training. And Jan-Dirk Gutsima highlights trust, respect, and professionalism.
It's interesting how these themes of preparedness and strong values keep coming up, even in such different contexts.
Right. And Koshelenko himself talks about learning new skills during the war, even learning to use a carbine for urban combat.
It's about adapting, about staying relevant.
And the book emphasizes the importance of continuous learning, even in wartime.
Yeah, it's about staying sharp, about keeping your skills up to date.
And aligning knowledge levels within the team, engaging external experts, creating a culture of continuous learning.
The book even talks about this Focus Friday strategy,
Yeah.
where you dedicate a whole day to deep work with no meetings.
I like that idea.
Me too. It's about creating space for focused effort.
And the book also explores this concept of war-life balance.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. It's like, how do you even find balance when work bleeds into every aspect of your life?
Right. And the book emphasizes the importance of leaders providing stability and clear guidance, even as they're practicing tactical disconnection to recharge.
It's about finding ways to stay grounded and energized, even in the midst of chaos.
And the book shares personal experiences of family separation and return during the war.
It's a reminder that even in a war zone, people are still living their lives, still dealing with those personal challenges.
Exactly. And the book even talks about sports as a secret weapon of leaders.
Interesting, how so?
It's about fostering endurance, discipline, teamwork, strategic thinking, and the ability to bounce back from defeat.
It's like a microcosm of leadership.
Right. And the book also highlights the importance of recovery for top managers.
Like athletes needing rest and recovery after a big game.
Exactly. And then it brings in Alexia Mikkels' insights on personal resilience.
What are some of her key takeaways?
She talks about the importance of humility, solidarity, focusing on what you can control, and protecting your personal base camp by managing your energy.
It's about taking care of yourself, both physically and mentally.
And she also emphasizes the importance of realistic optimism.
Like acknowledging the challenges, but also believing that things can get better.
Exactly. Now, looking towards the future, the book also touches on post-war reconstruction.
It's hard to imagine what that will look like, but it's important to start thinking about it now.
Absolutely. And the book brings in Lauren Young's historical perspective on this.
What are some of her key points?
She talks about the geopolitical significance of Ukraine, the challenges to Western democracies, the need for ethical leadership,
And the long-term implications of the conflict.
Right. And the book also considers the potential impact of technological advancements on the future.
It's like the world is changing so rapidly, and this war is just accelerating those changes.
It is. And the book also talks about the need for new security rules, a new way of thinking about global security.
It's like, how do we prevent something like this from happening again?
Exactly. And the book presents a vision of future managers who are more focused on the well-being of people.
A more human-centered approach to leadership.
Exactly. And the contributors offer their own insights on post-war reconstruction.
Like focusing on networks, long-term solutions, generative management, learning from Ukraine's experience.
Taking care of veterans, bringing Ukrainians home, aligning with international standards.
And the importance of competition, rule of law, human empathy.
It's a complex and multifaceted challenge.
And finally, Koshelenko shares his own reflections on writing the book.
His motivations, the challenges he faced, the tools he used, including AI assistance.
It's like a behind-the-scenes look at the process.
It is, and it really underscores his desire to share these experiences with the world.
To learn from them, to grow from them.
Exactly. So to sum it all up, this deep dive into management in times of war has revealed some incredible insights.
About adaptability, resilience, team cohesion, strategic resource allocation, leveraging technology, international cooperation, and the importance of personal values.
And while the context is wartime Ukraine, these principles are relevant to anyone facing a crisis or a period of uncertainty.
It's about being prepared, being adaptable, being resilient.
So here's a final thought for you to consider. How can you apply a wartime mindset to your own life or work?
How can you be more proactive, more prepared for the unexpected?
It's a question worth reflecting on.
And if you're looking for more insights, we highly recommend checking out Management in Times of War.
It's a powerful and thought-provoking read.
And it reminds us that even in the face of adversity, there is always the potential for growth, for learning, for those aha moments that can make all the difference.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
See you next time.